This is the Sim Pit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and welcome to today's edition of Pitstop. And of course, it's our very special edition, Friday edition, and that means Billy Strange is here with us today. How you doing, Billy?
I like that little point that you did. I don't even know which way you are on the screen, but I like this.
I don't know if I pointed the right way. I should have done this for this one.
That one. So I have to point up?
Yes, only for this set. Then it's diagonal after.
Perfect.
How are you doing?
Good. A little bit of a fire drill.
It is. I want to apologize for being late. First of all, I hate when we're running late. And I also want to apologize for anything and everything that could go wrong in today's show because, and maybe I should get into our topic. And in fact, I'll clarify all that in just one moment. Billy, what have you been? Oh, also with us today is Brandon Waters. How you doing, Brandon?
I am fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Oh, fantastic.
Fantastic. Very polite today, Brandon is.
Yes.
And I want to thank Brandon for doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work to keep this show rolling along. But, so, let's start with Billy. What have you been up to this week? What have you been racing? What are you driving?
Well, I did about 3 failed attempts at a video this week, so that was time wasted. And then I finished up my R Factor 2 GT3 Challengers Pack and Sebring review. So just in case, if you get bored, if anybody gets bored or they're interested in those, I released the review last night. Enjoyed those cars, including the older pack of GT3 cars. They've it feels like, to me at least, they've updated everything. They all run well together. And again, I'm just, from how the 650 was originally released, remember when they did the original, what was it, the McLaren World's Fastest Gamer?
Yes.
I hated those cars. The 650 was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a complete 180 for me. The previous cars and the new cars, they are some of the best driving GT3 cars still. I know I stated it before, but you know, they've had some updates to the cars since then. Still some of the best GT3 cars that they're not the same as Race Room. They obviously don't feel the same because Race Room, their physics are a little different.
Sure. But
I get the same enjoyment out of driving the R Factor GT3 cars as I do the Race Room GT3 cars. Okay. And Sebring is just awesome. Like I did the whole day to night cycle and everything. It looks, I tell you what, R Factor 2 does not look impressive during the day. It just doesn't. But when the sun starts to go down or nighttime, especially on that Sebring track, I think it looks really good.
So I think you stated it before, but to clarify, is this like I think of those, you know, if somebody were to say to you, what's your favorite scenario in sim racing? You know, has that combo like literally become one of your absolute favorites, the GT3s at Sebring and R Factor 2?
I could drive that combo a lot. The only problem I have right now is the AI, which is not my normal experience. I explain all this in the video, but briefly, the AI is too aggressive on that track. They're throwing blocks and like dive bombs at 0% aggression, which is like, that should be where they barely make a pass, if anything. And so, you know, for those people that want a more offline experience, like you're racing against people online, then you might like it.
I was going to say,
that's what it feels like. It feels like you're actually racing against people online, which I don't particularly like.
No, it's like a rung lower than real life racing. You know, it's like, no, these are computer racers. They're maniacs. All of them.
So they're like, literally, I put in clips where the AI blocks this way. You know, you move this way, they block this way, and then you move back, and then they swing back over to make the corner. But early, it's not even they're going over here and make the corner. They're coming clear back across and then diving back in. You're like, jeez. So that for right now, that's my only criticism. But the car and the track itself is just a ton of fun. And I think my favorite is the McLaren, which I think is most people's favorite. But I really like the M6, and I really like the Aston Martin, and of course because it's a difficult car to drive. Most people don't like that one.
Yeah, surprise.
I'd have to say, out of all the GT3 cars, the Corvette, the Callaway, is still my favorite. I get along better with front engine cars.
Right.
But the McLaren feels really good. The 720.
front engine rear wheel drive cars and sim racing in general to me just are they're more natural. It's like the car just does what you expect all the time for the most part.
Yeah. You don't tend to have the swing weight that can happen in a mid-engine car, and plus you tend to drive a mid-engine car slightly different, just because it's kind of the mix between driving a Porsche and then driving the front-engine car. Because the front-engine car, you can feed throttle through the corner.
Yeah, oh, you can overdrive it all day long, and it loves it, other than the rear tires.
The mid-engine car has a very fine balance of, you can do it a little bit, but it doesn't like it a whole lot. And then, of course, a Porsche, typically, you can't do that at all.
Sure.
It's a point-and-shoot car.
Well, we're all learning that running the Ferrari GTE in training. It's like, well, it's a classic mid-engine car, and man, you have to drive that a lot differently than other cars we've driven or that we drive typically. What about you, Brandon? You getting out on track much?
A little bit, and it kind of segues a little bit into our first story. I guess I did do some dirt rally stuff. I finally bit the bullet, and based off of what they were saying last week of not having VR support at Dirt Rally 2, I went ahead and bought the original Dirt Rally finally, and thought, you know what, if this is my only outlet for Dirt Rally and VR, I'll go ahead and do it. So I did some of that, kind of did some practice for that league that some of the pit crew guys were doing.
Sure.
And it was total riot. Loved it. So, and then other than that, I kind of felt like stepping away from sim racing a little bit. So I did some DCS of all things, just kind of cruising around in some airplanes, and then
Digital Combat Simulator for anybody.
Yeah, Digital Combat Simulator. And then, the only other thing I did, and what we'll probably talk about here in just a second, is KartKraft and their VR update.
Awesome. Big donation there from Scuderia Bazan.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I seem like I'm the guy who never gets to race or drive as much as I'd like. This week was a very exciting week for me, which is why today's show is late, which is why today's show might, I don't know if anything's working. I haven't even looked over there much to see if things are working or not. But this was format and update week. So I, thanks to some very generous donations from some of the pit crew, am upgrading my system so that the next streams will be even higher quality. We're just trying to get better graphics, better, streams, everything. So with that, it meant that, and you can compare this to doing a format or a reinstall of everything, hardware and software, prior to a league race. But it's like getting ready for this show, I'm trying to remember every last detail that I need to not only do the show, but prepare the show. Get OBS set up. Do I have all my graphics put back onto the now formatted hard drive? And before all that was, of course, getting everything off of the machines before I formatted them. So it's been a nutso week for me. I mean, I am like brain dead right now. It's amazing I'm here at all. But it just, it was really, I think about, I've done this before, a league race. And the same sort of thing. You're like there, you've done everything, and now you're getting in, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't map that button. Or, oh my God, I didn't download the car pack. Or, it's like there's always that last minute thing. And even today, it was like I had forgotten to load a paint program and couldn't make a thumbnail. So it meant that other than practicing for the 12 hours of Sebring, I didn't do any driving and all, to totally confess. Had some friends over, and I demoed some Mazda at Laguna just so they could get a taste of sim racing for the first time. But that wasn't really me driving. That was watching someone else drive around the track, not me driving. But yeah,
vicarious.
It's been nothing but hardware and software and techie stuff. And I wish I had my FU Windows graphic ready to go, but I don't. And then I'm going long-winded here, but I have two systems, and I use the same ISO IO thumb drive, for Windows when you redo a Windows, and both installs came out different. And it's like, FU Windows, how is that possible? How is it that these two did not install identically using the exact same installer on fresh copies? But anyway,
it's just because they're spying on you.
Yeah, apparently. So FU Windows, FU. So yeah, that's it. So we should probably move on to the news. I blab. You guys need to cut me off. You guys need a button on your end to just be like, dump.
Just do the easy button.
So we do have
again,
some sim racing
hi to
news,
everybody
though.
in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. If you guys have any questions, we'll do questions that are topic related or at the end of the show. So if you got questions, just throw them out there,
And of
we'll
course,
pick them up.
what were they driving too? I always, because maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I'm didn't know. Oh, whatever you do, drop everything and go drive some NASCAR Heat 3 because Billy loves it.
Yeah, it looks like Spatial was running a GT1 race at Shanghai and finished second out. Yeah, out of the class. So
nice, awesome. All right, so news. Should I get us going on this? You want to?
Sure.
This is good news. I am dying to try it, and I had a few people email me over the weekend letting me know. Well, I guess this was just yesterday I got these emails. But KartKraft VR beta out now. And it was like, oh, and our gang, it's like no VR, no buyer, a good portion of the people we drive and race with. And so this is a big deal. I'm a little afraid, to be honest with you. I haven't done it. Brandon, you tried it, so I'm dying to hear from you. My experience with certain VR moments can be karting, and the speed of turning and karting to me presents a little bit of a challenge for VR, and can it keep up? So I haven't tried it yet. Brandon, I think you said you did.
I did, yeah. Was pretty excited for it actually, and I bought the game or the sim a while back actually, and just waited until they released this. So it was fantastic. The only, it's obviously a pre-release, so keeping that in mind. Same thing with like ACC. There's technical issues. They're still working on physics as far as like the carts and balance and things you wouldn't think of, like center of gravity, and if you catch too much curb, it can flip the cart or whatever. But as far as the overall experience with VR, it was fantastic. It really reminded me of the times in my past when I've run carts. The only probably gripe that I have at this point is that, with VR, it uses the camera placement of the driver, and it pulls the cues for that camera off of the chassis for the cart. And carts aren't exactly the smoothest riding things in the world.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. So it picks up a lot of that road vibration and noise, makes it kind of a really bouncy experience. Luckily, I've got enough time in VR to where it doesn't affect me as much, but I think somebody that is sensitive to that inner ear issue that causes motion sickness, if they're sensitive to that, then I could see where it would cause a problem. But if you can adjust to that, it's pretty dang amazing, and it really translates the karting experience really well.
And in their known issues, they mentioned there's no horizon lock for the head simulation, which is exactly what you're talking about there.
Yep.
So with that said, one of my favorite things that Oculus does, if you look at Oculus games in their stores, they have a comfort rating. And to me, that's like, you can pretty much tell if you're thinking about it buying a game, for me, it comes down to the comfort level. And if it says it's uncomfortable, then I don't really want to do it. So with the no lock, was it comfortable, or did you find it nauseating at all?
At first it was a bit much to process, but once I kind of gave myself time to adjust to it, and just like with getting into VR, and this was pretty important when I dove, all into VR, was if you start to feel that, just stop, let your body kind of adjust, and then when you're feeling good again, go back into it. But after a while, it was no issue. I did, it's buzzy, and obviously it kind of magnifies some of the issues with VR clarity now and the resolution with all the movement. But looking past that, it was not a problem. It was fantastic, really.
Awesome. Well, and that kind of takes us to the next story, I suppose. Billy, I'm not sure if you got the order. We kind of sprung things in at the last second, and then I walked away.
You'll have to start this because I don't know anything about HP.
Well, and I don't know anything about it, and it's really just talking about the future. But I guess it's good news, because when I hear more companies getting involved, when you have a growing amount of manufacturers for the VR world, I think that is a good benefit. But HP is working on a VR headset with a higher resolution than the HTC Vive Pro. Now, from personal experience, I think the Vive Pro's resolution is better than Oculus, from what I've tried. That doesn't mean that I prefer that unit, by the way. I'm kind of torn on which is my favorite, really. I'm between the Vive Pro and the Oculus for opposite reasons, actually. But anyway, another, company getting in, pushing the graphics another level. Again, the VR, we're going to keep talking about this. It's going to keep being this, like, outlier for a while, in my opinion, because the support on the software side has just been spotty.
Right. I would agree.
I got my VR and I got a couple games and I'm like, this is freaking awesome. And then I started looking, I'm like, yeah, but they're like no more games to buy. I'm like, unless I just want to play things because they're VR, which I don't. I want to play games that I would normally buy, to an extent. Actually, I take that back. I don't know if I would have bought Robo Recall when it's my favorite game ever. Anyway, that's all. Next up.
I was going to say, I think the real takeaway from that story is the tech leap there. If I looked at the specs correctly, I think it's about double what the Oculus is as far as resolution, which is pretty substantial. I think the thing that's going to be important now is getting the next leap. And hopefully they're not going to push for that coming from the hardware side of things as far as like GPU manufacturers, because right now if a 1080 Ti is struggling to push something like a Pimax at full res, it doesn't matter how great they make the screens, they need to come up with something like eye tracking or some sort of rendering technology that makes it to where they're not going to have to run crazy bleeding edge systems to run VR properly.
Well, and the leap to a 2080 Ti, it's not like, oh, cool, it cured everything. Even at that level, you're still not exactly talking about running like a Pimax level at the level it should. And that's another whole thing. It's like, well, the hardware holdback on VR is a huge deal. There's a reason the resolution is where it is. It's not because they can't get more resolution. It's because you can't really push more resolution. It seems.
Yeah, it's kind of what it seems like. And, I don't know. I don't have a crazy system or a Pimax 5K or any of that. So just put up with what we got.
See, maybe what they need is a dual video card where you don't link them together. You literally use dual video cards, one being left eye, the other being right eye. Oh. All right. Well, all right. On to more interesting topics. Actually, this is something that we've covered on this show. Billy, you want to take us into dirt?
Yeah, dirt. The Codemasters people, well, they've relented. So they put out a tweet that just said that Oculus and they have heard the VR masses, for lack of a better term, and VR support will be coming this summer to Dirt Rally 2.
I like to think that we as a community, as they said, we heard you. I think we, our group in particular, we've been very vocal about this. And I think there's some higher ups who might even listen to us and pay attention to what we talk about. But this is, I say it on the show all the time. It's like, if you contact them in a reasonable way and express your views, they do listen. If you just trash them and troll them with your negative views, it usually goes unheard. But I think this just shows that the community demanded to an extent, but did it in a positive way. Like, we want Dirt Rally 2, and we want it in VR. And then you also got to wonder about the money side. Like, I heard somebody say and speculate, well, Oculus obviously paid.
Oh, I believe that.
For them to make
I
it
believe
exclusive.
the only reason it's in is because Oculus paid.
So who listened? Cody's or
That's
Oculus?
So that was going to be my conspiracy theory, is Oculus really listened and then like, well, yeah, I mean, we got some people that want it. And Oculus was like, no, we need to put it in here. Because I'm just saying, why would you put Oculus in there? Oculus has heard you. So I think it's great. It doesn't really matter either way, obviously, that those of you that run VR, I'm excited for you guys. I think it's, I'm hoping, cross our fingers, that it's good. and that people will have a good time with Dirt Rally in VR. You know, it's not coming at launch, but at least it is coming.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you know, it kind of makes me question that if Oculus is behind it, which it was rumored, and you know, I don't know if there's actual proof of this, that Oculus was behind VR and Dirt Rally 1. But if they're behind this here, how much can a hardware developer or somebody like Facebook or Oculus influence the development of these games? You know, I don't know what you guys think about that, but
Well, I think it's
it's
the best case scenario because instead of Cody's trying to have to write whatever to convert it to Oculus, now the Oculus guys who this is what they do, now they maybe come in and actually take care of that part of the project. Like if you have to pay Cody's to do it, wouldn't it be cheaper to do it for Cody's and pay them to let it happen? I hope. You know, again, it comes back to that comfort rating for me and
Right.
being maximized and optimized the best. And, you know, I don't know who would develop that side. I'm sure they work together, you know.
I'm sure there's support. You know, when I'm never mind. So what's interesting is kind of the speed this story has taken this week, because I know several of us were having conversations about it, and my opinion was, what I had heard is that they have stated it's not coming. From what I heard internally a little while ago, it would be very unlikely if it was coming. And then Jimmy Broadbent did a preview and said VR is not coming when he was at the event. And then credit to William Marsh at the Sim Racing Paddock. He did some sort of, I don't know what you call it, but like a test or something. He did a preview, there we go, with the developers. And he, and I guess the other people that were in there kind of pressed on the VR thing. Like, why the hell are you guys not putting in VR? Everybody that, you know, used VR in Dirt Rally loved it. Like, why is it not going in? And they said, well, we're listening to the community, but we're not, as of right now, it's not going to be in there, but we're not going to say it's never going to be in there, kind of thing. So it's weird, like the progression. And then literally today we get the news that VR is going to be in the game. Now, prior to this news from the tweet, I was going to make the prediction that in order for it to come, you know, VR to be implemented, I was going to say they're going to have to get enough sales to say, okay, we have this many people finally have bought Dirt Rally 2.0. This is a good enough incentive for us to put in VR. And my point was going to be, maybe if you wanted VR, that you should buy the title, because then that will encourage them more to put VR in there.
Right.
But then that flipped the script with the whole tweet this morning. I was like, oh, well, crap, look at that. So my suspicion is that Oculus got together and either persuaded. I think it's kind of the same scenario as before, is what I'm getting at. I think Oculus kind of stepped in and said, this should be, this should have VR in it.
Maybe, I don't want to give these guys strategic ways of taking money from us, but maybe one of the approaches for some of these companies who are on the fence on VR should be release the game without VR and let the complainers, you know, no VR, no buy has become a slogan beyond our show.
Right.
And it's like, play into that, and it's like, cool. So right when you normally would start bringing down the cost of the game because sales have started to peter, boom, you hit them with VR and you get a second wave. And I think there are a handful of games that I actually wanted to buy, wanted to play, but it was when, like in the case of Wrench, for example, I owned Wrench, wanted to play, ran out of time, never got to it. Then they went VR, and I'm like, oh, firing that up today. And so I think it could lead to a second wave of sales if they did it right in that respect.
Well, I mean, if you look back at the PlayStation, the PSVR, they charged for, if I'm not mistaken, they charged for adding VR to it. So while you don't want there to be an extra tax, let's call it,
right,
for using VR, if it is something that the developer feels like it's costing them so much more, which again, Codemasters kind of makes it sound that way. Then maybe, I don't know if VR users are okay with paying a little extra to get VR into the game. It's a shame that it doesn't come with it on launch day is my only thing. If you're going to put it in, it would have been cool for the VR people to have it on launch.
Sure.
That's the only thing that's a bummer.
Sure. And again, that's an interesting idea too, treating VR as a DLC almost, you know. Like,
yeah. I mean, not that I want it to be that way.
No, but it could. I mean, for small developers, what if that was the difference, though?
That's the thing. But then you kind of make the argument that Codemasters isn't necessarily a small developer. No. So it's kind of like, it should have been there in the beginning. But yeah, it's still good. You know, however way it got into the means of being put into Dirt Rally 2.0, it just doesn't matter. It's coming. So that's cool.
So Brandon, now that you bought Dirt 1 because you didn't, or Dirt Rally 1 because you didn't think Dirt Rally 2 was going to get it, do you regret buying Dirt Rally 1?
Actually, no, because, I mean, they were saying summer before the possible implementation of this anyway. So it's going to be a while. So that'll carry me over until then. I will buy Dirt Rally 2 now, just based off the fact that I know it is coming.
Right.
I may not install it and play it until then, but I'll have it, and I'll put my money where my mouth is and say, okay, I said no VR, no buy, you know, publicly, many places. So I was like, okay, they came good with it, so I'll come good on my end.
Right. There's a post with this. We're going long. Who cares? We're going long. Steve Clark, I don't know who this is. This is just a post on their Facebook page in regards to the VR. And he says, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. He's like, holy shit, there are a lot of complainers here. It's a game, not a kidney transplant. You won't die if it's not perfect match for what you want. Instead of complaining about what it does or doesn't do, enjoy it for what it does offer. $60 for literally hundreds of hours of racing fun compared to $60 to go to a theater 4 times to watch movies for a total of 8 hours. Anyway, he goes on and on and on, but I just thought, I'm like, I totally, to an extent, you know, I've always had a thing like...
Yeah, that's a sim racing argument in general for me personally. I mean, the value, that's a whole nother topic as far as the return on investment is hours invested versus what you get back, you know, for your money.
Now Billy's going to bring up Heat 3.
So I understand the point that's being made, but I kind of disagree in the fact that so a lot of our experiences are based on previous experiences, right? Mm-hmm. So I think part of the argument would be, I think it's the argument like Sims not having a lot of weather, a lot of Sims up until now seeming to not have a lot of weather options, to not have a lot of day to night transition options, that kind of stuff, because games 10, 12, 15 years ago did that. And so in the case of Dirt Rally, I think when it has a feature and then that feature is no longer available, and it's a feature that has been outspoken, that people really, really enjoyed, I think people have a legit complaint to what they expect. They're not asking for Dirt Rally to have stock cars in it to go with the NASCAR Heat theme there. Right. You know, I do believe in looking at a sim or a game even and understanding what they offer. I've been playing the Resident Evil 2 remake. I'm a traditional Resident Evil guy. I do like the fixed camera, weird tank controls because it's just like an RC car to me. So my brain interprets it really well. It doesn't bother me. But that's not what the remake is. The remake is third person over the shoulder. Now, I could complain all day that it's not this, fixed camera view. But that's not what the game set out to be. Just like Dirt Rally 2, Dirt Rally was set out to encompass a certain amount of things. And Dirt Rally 2 no longer having that VR, it's not a drastic enough change. It didn't go arcade, right? It didn't go way off. It's not even like Dirt 4, I would argue. So Dirt Rally 2, I think there's a legit complaint to not having VR in a lot of these sims. Now, you can make the complaint again. Let's say Ritza in their next title for Automobilista, whatever that's going to be, doesn't have VR. Is it a shame that it doesn't have VR? Sure. But the last one didn't have VR.
Sure. No, that's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
And a fair expectation. I mean, in not that it's the same, but it would almost be like, well, what if Dirt Rally supported your wheel and Dirt Rally 2 didn't? You know, because you're talking about supporting of equipment here too. And it's like, well, yeah, you can't take that away. You already gave it to me. You know, I agree.
So
right.
Before we move on from this, if you guys don't mind, I mean, I know we're going kind of long on this one particular topic, but chat, and that's what this show's for, right? That's what this.
No, I'm enjoying reading everybody's
depth.
responses in chat too. Sorry.
Yeah, and chat's brought up a topic that is pretty relative, and after that, I've got a question for Mike at SimRacing 604 about it. But so what chat has brought up is the fact that is it a potential that if Oculus is backing this, if it's an Oculus exclusive? Now we're used to exclusives in console stuff, right? Microsoft pays money to get something exclusively for their console, or to have early access to it, or content that the other one doesn't. What if in this case Oculus says, okay, you know, we're going to pay the development cost for VR, but it's going to be available for release on the Oculus Store, you know, 3 months before it's available on Steam or something along those lines. What's your guys' opinion on that?
I think that's what we're seeing here, isn't it? It seems like the way they wrote it, that it might end up being Oculus exclusive.
I hate, again, that was part of, I didn't want to say, but that was part of my conspiracy, is that like, is this going to be an Oculus? I didn't want to gaslight the whole thing and say that it's going to be Oculus exclusive. So I'm hoping that it's just VR for everybody that enjoys VR. I'm hoping that, even though I don't particularly enjoy VR, I'm hoping that everybody that enjoys VR gets to run. And there's no limitations. There's no sold through Oculus, blah, blah, blah. Like, nope, it's available to everybody that wants to run VR, no matter if you have a Vive, Oculus, whatever.
I think the VR industry is hurting themselves unnecessarily by not trying to create a common compatibility, because right now market is their problem, not market share. And if they can't create the market to be huge, then who gives a shit about how much your share of it is? So right now they're fighting over trying to have exclusive titles, and meanwhile, you know, honestly, if I didn't have an Oculus and I couldn't play Robo Recall, I'd be pissed off. You know, it's like, that's like this great VR game. You know, and I know it goes both directions. And so I think that every time that happens, you upset people, and that just isn't helping growth of something that needs a growth wave to get where it needs to go. You know, and the thing that sucks about it is VR is going to be here to stay, in my opinion. It's not going to be a fad. It will be here to stay. And so the companies are lobbying to be the players in what will be a huge industry eventually. It's already a big industry, but it'll be huge. But so but again, like somebody brought up, it's like the Betamax VCR, you know, days, you know, and it's like, oh, well, we're fighting over who's going to become the way. And it's like, yeah, but it's also just sort of like two monitors, you know, so why does it have to be a way?
Right, what does it have to be one or the other?
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, and just like my monitors on my TVs, there's a lot of differences, and still maintain the commonality that lets the industry move forward and on a predictable. And it also makes it harder on developers too. If it's more complicated than just one and just saying VR, it's like, oh, well, are we going to do it for them and them and them and them, you know? So, all right.
Yeah. And then as far as Mike's question, and we've kind of answered part of this, I think, already, but read this here for you, is that with this being announced, is this a turning point for Codemasters as a developer? And does that lead to a potential of, say, like F1 2019, possibly having the ability to implement VR? And especially, he goes on to say, with only 10% of Steam users with VR. So as far as the turning point for Codemasters, I don't know if it's necessarily, you know, they seem pretty hard line as far as their original stance, and I think it's just the potential backing of Oculus coming in, or even if it's just Oculus and Facebook flexing their proverbial muscles. It's that change of stance. And as far as the 10% of users with the Steam using VR, that's a pretty hard number to look at, just because you have all the guys or the folks that are on Steam that aren't using VR like traditional users would. It's more, you've got your role-playing guys and the strategy guys that, your Steam users that aren't going to come into that effect. But what do you guys think as far as the F1 2019 and them listening to the community on that?
Billy?
Well, I mean, I think it's good that they listen to the community. I don't know that it's a turning point. They had the ability to do the same thing with the F1 series that came after Dirt Rally, and they didn't do it. So nothing here points to that F1 2019 will have it. It'll be great if they do, but past experience tells me that this is not a turning point. And I also have something to circle back to Dirt Rally 2.0 after we're done with this.
On that topic there, I don't think it's a turning point, but I think that the turning point will come for all games. Like, again, I don't think I'm predicting anything. I really do think that VR will be huge. Right now, and when you use the Steam numbers, it's like, well, Steam is, tens of thousands of games. So how many of them are actually truly VR compatible games? So when you use a 10% number, it's like, well, that might only be a reflection of how many games are even playable in VR when you look at the total buttload of games that are at Steam. So I don't know if that's a fair data point.
The 10% is the Steam users, but there is a caveat to that. There used to not be a privacy button that they had to implement, and you can actually take yourself off of people being able to read what titles you have, what you're using, that kind of thing. But because before, there used to be a website that you could go to, and it was fairly close. You could see how many people were playing, but there is now a privacy tab, and people have opted for that so that people can't read their information. So you have to take that into account. Plus the 10% is just Steam users with VR, not sim racing users.
Right.
And if you go by other statistics, the statistics for sim racers using VR is much, much higher than 10%.
Sure. I'd like to look at the list of like really good VR games that are also playable in fixed monitors and see how that number changes too, though. Where you might see it be more like 30-40% of the people using it.
My guess is it's close to that number right now for specific sim racing. It's closer to the 30 to 40%.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be my guess.
And
around 30 probably.
And I think that part of the market is where the growing market for VR is right now, because right now I think there's a certain stagnation happening in VR in general.
And that's the worry, is that you have other parts of the industry that it's not growing in, where I would say flight sims, anything that has that kind of motion is where the growth is. And I've speculated before that you may have companies turn into like what a Fanatic or a Thrustmaster might be, just purely for headsets developed for the sim racing market.
Sure. I can see that. And that's the thing, when we talk about the crossing point for a Codemasters, and somebody in chat mentioned, I think it was Todd, that, Cody's is more of a console company that makes it adaptable to the PC. But even then, it's like, well, what about PSVR? What about, but again, I feel like anybody who uses VR, there's no doubt in their mind that it's just a matter of time till every game. But they're just, there are little problems, like we were talking about KartKraft and the locking on Horizon. And it's like, well, VR brings up problems in gaming.
Yes, there's all sorts of issues that come with, and especially if a developer is not familiar with those things, it can give off, first impressions are everything. It's a bad VR experience, that kind of thing. So there's more factors to take into account when we use VR.
Absolutely.
To circle back around to something that I was listening to again, give credit to William Marsh's video. He also, which I had not heard yet up until he said, there's going to be a hardcore damage mode.
Ooh.
So, and the parts that are linked together are going to have an effect. If you damage one of those parts, it'll affect the other parts that it's linked to, apparently. But yeah, if you want to go hardcore on the damage mode, you're going to be able to do that. There's also going to be post-release content support. So it sounds like they've got 1 or 2 seasons that they're calling. So every 3 months, and they're going to release more cars and locations. And yes, that is correct. There is no snow stages available at launch for Dirt Rally 2.0.
But so when you say seasons, you're talking like 'tis the season.
Well, like we tend to think of spring,
right,
winter,
like Forza Horizon,
summer, autumn. Yes. So my understanding is it's kind of going to be like iRacing, or if you will, Shudder, Fortnite, where every 3 months or so, a new season will come out with new content. I don't know how long they're gonna do that. They only had, I think, 1 or 2 seasons lined out. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that they do this, because Codemasters has not shown a lot of post-released DLC content for the most part in previous years. So
yeah,
hopefully they do follow through with that. But it's kind of a bummer. There's no snow. It's going to have about the same amount of locations and stages as the first Dirt Rally did, which is, again, kind of a bummer, because it was kind of paltry on its offerings to begin with. But we don't have it in our hands yet. I don't want to. Part of me is a little bummed, but at the same point, I still want to try it. And I still, maybe those stages are going to be so awesome that I don't care.
So Billy's in the no snow, no buy category.
That's right, damn it. We're not talking about nose candy.
All in all, I think it's great that they listen to, even if it is a vocal minority, and if those numbers that we're all speculating on are true, if it ends up being 20 or 30% of the users are VR people, when you're talking about a smaller market of sim racing in itself, that starts to be a pretty big number. If they're looking at a quarter of their potential sales going away just by not supporting something like that, maybe it gives credibility to it in the long run.
Sure. All right, we're still on the news. That felt like a topic, huh?
Yep.
I think we exhausted everything. Sorry.
I think so.
No, I'm done. No. All right, let's move along. Race Room, the ADAC, the ADAC GT Masters eSport Championship starts today. That was yesterday, but anyway, it's their big eSport event, and there's a link to various broadcasts and things that you can see going on, qualifying for the final, and this all going on. The finals, May 3rd through 5th, I believe. So that's cool. That kicks off the Race Room. I mean, right now, all the big sims have an eSport. It's kind of cute.
So
it's so neat. And if you have Race Room and you haven't tried the GT3 cars in a while, I suggest you go try them. They made a little bit of an update last time. They're fun. I do enjoy running those cars in Race Room.
So as far as Race Room goes, and I had a question from chat that Azar asked, and basically is Race Room seems to be considered not as good as some of the other hardcore sims, or get less attention. Why do you two feel that is that way?
Go ahead, Shaun. I'll let you start this one. I'll be the closer and piss people off.
There's a couple parts to it. I think part of it is timing. So you could say they were kind of like, even though they're ahead of the game, their big wave or next level of attention came in after the others had gotten some good traction. That's part one. Part two, there's something, I love Race Room, and I'm not trying to slam them because everybody has different physics for different reasons and, whatnot. And, again, I'll come back to the Sim Pizza. You can take parts of everything. In general, of the serious sims, I think it just plays overall the most gamey. So comparing it to, just something about the physics and the handling of the car. I've always had a feeling like race room cars handled to me like they're a slot car, but the pin wasn't at the nose. It was where the mid-engine would be on a Ferrari. And that the whole car and all of its rotation and pivot and everything that happened to me, just when I drive it, felt like that is where the car was pinned to the ground. And it was just not... But now that is kind of like old race room versus I have to be, in all fairness, other than dabbling in the little races that we've done to try out new content, I haven't dug in deep enough to get perfectly in tune either. So that comes back to the market share for me, where it's like, well, they were just kind of like behind the gun compared to the other big sims at the time. So those are my easy thoughts. I mean, we could do a whole show on race room and content. And then the last thing I'll say is, I don't want to call it quality control, but I think race room has more variance from one spectrum to the other spectrum of cars in their library than other sims that you could be like, oh, this is how iRacing feels, and then you feel differences between cars, but they're all iRacing feel. This is the way R Factor feels. And I feel like race rooms just has this very broad spectrum where you get in some cars, you're like, oh, that's really nice. You get in some other cars, and you're like, oh, this feels like a kind of a dated handling model to me. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm done. Done.
So I think that, like you said, I think part of it is market share. I think part of it is the platform that they rolled out to begin with was not easy to understand. You had to purchase all these different things. It seems expensive. They didn't do themselves any favors when they launched. I think that really hurt them. I also think that it is what you are used to driving. And if you're used to iRacing, this is going to feel like easy. It's going to feel too easy. But I would argue that our iRacing doesn't feel exactly correct.
Agreed.
And the GT cars, I do not care for the GT cars in iRacing. So that's why I go back to the point I made with R Factor 2 earlier. Before, I felt R Factor 2 felt more like iRacing. The back end never seems to be really hooked up with those cars. They always feel like you're on edge. It's so nervous. And those cars, you can talk to so many people. Those cars don't drive like that. Those cars are so stuck to the track. They're going to feel easy. So it's hard. The idea is not that you can't, I shouldn't be able to do this. No, you should be able to make it around the track pretty easy. Right. To find that limit is going to be difficult. To be one of the best is going to be difficult. But in reality, GT3 cars, if you have some competence of driving and racing ability, they're going to be pretty easy to drive. And that is the argument I have always had with the GT3 stuff that I've played that was besides Race Room. Race Room, and now they've updated physics and tire models over the years, and you can tell, to your point, you can tell the difference in the ones that they haven't updated versus the ones that they have. But at least within the classes, they're all updated. So if you go run the GT3, GT2, GT1, even the GT4 cars, which I'm not a huge fan of, but the 3, 2, and 1, to me, they're some of the best feeling GT cars that you can race. Those make more sense to me than an iRacing car does. Or before, when that, like I said, when that 650 McLaren launched, I was like, what in the hell is this? Loses the back end constantly. The front end just slides all over the place. This is garbage. And now that they've done those revisions, whatever it is, I put R Factor 2, even though they don't feel exactly the same as a Race Room, I put R Factor 2 on that same level. They're intuitive. I should be able to make laps with those cars, not feel like everything is life or death like I do with a GT3 car in iRacing. I mean, yes, you can drive them hard, but there's like, you know what I'm saying? There is an edge. And in iRacing, you kind of feel like it's always nervous, like you're always on edge trying to hold on to the car. Right. And like, you know, you guys are running the GTE Ferrari. I don't enjoy that car. I just don't. It does not feel good to me. Quite frankly, it's a pain in the ass to drive. And so I think that when you're used to other sims, and I think you make the jump to another sim, let's take Race Room out of the equation. I think you're always going to have that basis of comparison to what you used to drive. And if it doesn't feel somewhat similar to what you drove, well, then it's either too easy or it's too hard. And so I think Race Room has got the reputation that it's more of a game than a sim because they feel like it's too simple or that it's too easy to drive. And all I would say, the argument is, I would say try it now, especially with their last physics and tire revisions. They've got more than one real life driver of those particular cars helping with the physics, helping with the driving, and what those cars should feel like. So I don't know. I really enjoy Race Room. I think they do. I think I like the variety of content that they have. Their purchasing model isn't easy to understand. I still think that hurts them. But you can buy all the content available, you know, at that moment of purchase. There is a way to buy it all, and you're not paying onesie, twosie, an arm and a leg pricing for it.
I think they were hurt back in time when there was some difficulties with like changing your controllers and getting it to acknowledge and change, like recognize the hardware that you now had versus the hardware you had previously. And I think that might have discouraged a handful of people. I also think that it's probably long overdue, and I don't know how you accomplish it. That would be a show in its own, just talking about that. But at some point, some of these sims that evolve need to figure out ways to rebrand, because the power of a number 2, you know, in the case of R Factor to R Factor 2, and at what point, you know, we talk about when most game companies pull the plug on support because they're developing the next version. Race Room have been developing for years and years and years and basically charging us nickels because it's just the little content differences, you know, which are very inexpensive individually. So, you know, I think that they could probably do some house cleaning, do some behind the scenes updates, and come out with a $60, you know, or whatever they want to charge version. Here's this much content, and then get back to the DLC train for that. But it might actually help them because it might be what gets people to go back.
Yeah, they do have the nice thing about Race Room is you can try everything before you buy it.
Right.
So that's really the cars, you can try them before you buy them. They do make different packages that you can buy. There's like a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, or I don't know. It's something like that. But that will get you some of the content, more of the content, all of the content. So they have done that, but it's still not, when you go to their store, it's still not something that's easily understandable. You're kind of like, well, and then they don't say, when you buy it at this date, you're getting all the content up to this date, and everything after that will again be DLC. And I think that is not really well stated either. On top of that, they are working on a ranking system. That's something to know. And they are holding monthly races. So they just did a Bathurst race, 1.2 hours of Bathurst, where you qualified. It seated you in a room, and it was a multi-class race. They're going to be doing more of that as they go along. And I would have done it, except I didn't know qualifying had already closed. But if you're into the multiplayer aspect, they are themselves holding races, more of those type of races in the future. So that's another thing. But circle back to the question, I think it's a variety of reasons that people kind of feel like it's a game versus a sim. And it also depends on what you want out of a sim. If you want day to night transitions and pit stops, well, they have pit stops now. So I don't know. It just depends on what you want out of a sim. I don't need day to night transition. It's not, I mean, I like it. It's just like weather. I really don't care about weather. I just don't. So, but if that's what makes a sim to you, then you're going to feel like Race Room is arcade versus a sim.
Sure. In addition to all that, great conversation on Race Room. They do also talk about having a next patch with a major update to shared memory, bringing a lot more information. However, it comes at a price. They'll be breaking some backward compatibility on some other outputs, I believe, that are going on from the sim. So, I mean, and again, that gets back to the point of what I was saying. It's like, well, gosh, these guys do an awful lot of work that they don't necessarily get paid for.
They do.
But
I would agree with that.
But they also have a really, like you said, their business model is really cool and fair to us sim racers. I have to check on that. I'm expecting a very important delivery. Do you guys mind if I step away for one moment?
No, go ahead. Just
Sure,
before you go, I was going to thank Azar for the question and for the donation.
Thank you. Yes, here.
Oh, yes, thank you. I got so caught up in talking. That's such a jerk. I didn't even see it.
Well, I think it's great that they continue to support the title after the fact, and I know we've talked about that before. What's a reasonable duration for something like this? And I kind of like developers that, continue on and support their product versus what kind of comes across when they just are churning out new titles. As to me, it kind of comes off as a money grab,
Right. Yeah, and we could talk about how they don't let you do your own skins and stuff like that. I do think that is to their detriment, but
Agreed.
I think to Shaun's point, they're not charging constantly. I think they're when they do bring out a new car or a new track, I think it's very reasonably priced. You get discounts, and if you add to a pack, they discount it like you had already, because you already have part of the content. So you do get a lot of discounts. I think the pricing model is reasonable. Like I said, so I think they charge for the skins just to recoup a little bit of the cost.
Right.
There's probably some licensing agreements that they have to account for, but I don't know. Realistically, when I was buying all the content, which was until recently when they started giving me review copies for stuff, I had already bought like 95% of everything on my own. And that was before they came out with the packs that you could purchase. I don't know. I feel like it's reasonable.
Yeah, that should speak volumes to the game itself. You know what I mean? If you could justify buying most of it on your own anyway, based on what you want out of a sim. I mean, I couldn't imagine if, say, iRacing followed this model and went, "Hey, you bought the roof, however you want to pronounce it, and
right.
We're coming out with Porsches now. Here's a discount on the GT3 or the Gen 6 car based on the fact that
correct, which is essentially what Race Room and Sector 3 does. So that's a whole nother topic for another day as far as iRacing. We've kind of breached that topic before in terms of pricing model, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it is a sim. I don't disparage Race Room. It's a sim to me because it has what I want of it. Plus, it has some really awesome stuff that not a lot of other sims have. I mean, GTO, 92 DTMs, like just some cool stuff.
Yeah, don't mention DTMs. Todd Unwin will get fired up. So that's his jam.
Do you think that iRacing would sell more or less content if they let you test drive it?
I think they would sell. Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Because can you imagine the people that buy something and then hate it?
Well, I'm like, okay, so if Billy test drove the 488, it'd be, no, I'm not buying that car, right?
Or the Dirt Midget.
Well, when the Dirt Midget was first released, it was not good. Yeah, it's better. It's way better now. But yeah, if I had known what the Dirt Midget was going to be like when it first came out, I wouldn't have bought it.
Same.
I think it only applies to the cars in iRacing. I mean, for me, like the tracks, it's like kind of a no-brainer at iRacing.
I think the track is what the track. I think that it is what it is.
It is what it is, and that's you got to give iRacing credit on tracks. Their tracks are just brilliant. Speaking of iRacing, are we done with Race Room?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just a quick mention. I don't want anybody to miss it because this is kind of a big deal, and I want to get a few thoughts out of Billy Strange on this. But NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Racing Series starts February 12th, and this is, gosh, to an extent, you could almost say this is the first real season in some ways. No, it's not. They've been doing it 10 years, but this is the first season where it's not just walking the stage at Homestead, but some of these guys are racing for some real NASCAR teams. We saw the draft go down last week, and some big names. Obviously, Ray Alfalo, the 4-time champion in iRacing, was the first in the draft. Anyway, did you hear about or stay on top of the draft at all? There,
I watched
Billy?
it.
You watched it?
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of weird having just Kevin, Otto, and Tony reading the picks. That was kind of odd.
I'm not quite
They could have just written that up is what I'm getting at. they didn't need to.
It was... They were trying to make it exciting, but it was on Facebook when it premiered, and Facebook was not having a good time being smooth with its stream, so that was part of the problem. And the other part of the problem is they're trying to make it exciting, and I understand that. So they had this, they have so many minutes, the team has so many minutes to make a pick. And while that can add tension, and the broadcasters were trying to do a good job of speculating and doing that. So they did a good job.
Sure.
The broadcasters I thought were fine.
They made lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah. And I thought that the presentation wasn't that bad. Having Tony, I like the guy. Having Tony announce the drivers though was very, and now we are getting so-and-so to go to so-and-so team. Yay. I was just
the only excitement they actually needed was an actual representative from each team, and it even could have been audio only. They didn't even need the...
Yeah.
It's you just needed something to show that there was actually something going on, not just that we're waiting on a text message so that Tony can read the pick.
Yes, and thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Get that going. And I have to admit, these are the things that I do get really excited for, because this is it's not my baby grown up, but this is my sport, my hobby, and we finally achieved this level where, look, these people at NASCAR know who we are, and so I was just, it could have been even cooler for sure.
I don't want to crap all over it because it was a good idea. I think if you, like you said, Shaun, they would have had a representative from the actual team that they were going to, or maybe if they could have had all those guys waiting in the wings, and when they got drafted, give them 30 seconds to say, hell yeah, man, this is awesome. I'm so glad to be a part of Wood Brothers. But then we run into the problem that, you're going to get a stick in the mud for personality. But
so
at least give him the opportunity, right?
Then he gets to be that guy. I mean, but because we're building fans, right? Okay, so
they need to know their personality. I have no idea. Besides, I think Alfala's been on your show, so I kind of know what his personality is. I don't know what 95% of these guys' personality are, because hardly, some of them stream, so I kind of know those, but the majority of these guys, I have no idea their personality, and I think it would garner more fandom. Kind of hate to use that phrase, but that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for people to get behind a horse.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds weird. Don't use that phrase. But you're looking for people to get excited, and not having them get to interject, hey man, I am freaking stoked, or however somebody's going to say it, that I'm excited that I'm on the Wood Brothers team. 2019 is going to be an awesome year. I can't wait till Daytona. Let's go get them something.
Sure.
And like I said, I'm not trying to be mean to Tony. I just think that they could have used the guys that were broadcasting to announce, or the team principal to announce, rather than Tony.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And we're
it wasn't bad. It could have been better.
We're in this world where, this is a webcam. My cell phone is a webcam. These companies have enough money, they could have sent a $50 webcam to everybody involved in the thing. That wouldn't have been that much money in the grand scheme of a $100,000 competition. But
Christ, they had their picture though. They don't even need to do that. Just have them talk. They all got headsets.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just thinking this is the moment where, you know, if you're into baseball and you get drafted by the Dodgers, if, you know, if you're in you know, whatever your sport is, but it's like, here's sim racing, this hobbyist cult gaming thing. And all of a sudden we have the likes of a JR Motorsports, a Wood Brothers Racing, you know, and it's like, this is, in our world, the equivalent to being drafted by the Dodgers. And I missed not having that moment in such a first time, only time this is ever going to happen quite like this. You know, because even if they do it again, it'll be the second year version. This was the one, you know, and it's like, it could have been so special, and it wouldn't have taken a whole lot to do it. I mean, I'm so excited about what's going on, so it sounds like we're beating up on them because of our disappointment, but it's only because I wanted more. Ultimately, I'm like, we're
saying it as fans.
Yes, totally.
You know, and I just like I said, I'm not trying to beat it into the ground or anything. I think it was fine. I just think from a business perspective, if you're trying to get people behind this esports thing, then in all seriousness, I think some of these drivers need to be coached. They need to be coached on how to PR, how to talk. Let's not have people that talk like this. Yes,
Right.
I was very excited that I won the race. Thank you very much. I go home and now I sit in my rig. Thank you.
Well, and I think that
so we need excitement. We need these guys to be to have a personality, and we need a place for them to showcase that personality.
I can't root for them on their name alone. I can't root for them on their affiliation with a real life racing team alone.
Sure.
I can root for people who I have some kind of bond, you know. I think, you know, it's like that mentality, you know, hey, which one of these guys do I want to sit down and share a beer with? Because that's the guy I want to root for, right? And that is still, we don't know. You know, we have no idea.
Mm-hmm. That's just like real life, you know. There's so much exposure to these drivers, you know, and they don't catch them in between the haulers or whatever, or, you know, the real button down proper guys, you know, that's where some of those guys always got criticism, as they were always so Mr. PR and polished and perfect, and that creates one whole different fan group versus, you know, the good old boys. They're like, oh yeah, you know, I like Keselowski talking about punching some dude in the mouth or whatever after the race, and that is what makes them relatable, and that's what makes them fans. And, you know, if you get somebody on there, you know, if you catch Michael Conti or somebody, just an example at a bad time, and he's talking about, oh yeah, I, you know, put that guy into the fence because he treated me bad a couple races ago. That's the sort of thing that I think it was missing. Would be a great addition.
Sure.
Well, and David brings up a good point. You know, one of the peak drivers was streaming it, and another driver was on his stream and made a racial, not so nice comment. But you know what? That causes people to talk. It gives you somebody to go against, or gives you somebody that is interested in a redemption story if they can overcome their you know, misspeakings per se.
Sure.
I just, to Carl's point, you know, do we really care about a racer's personality? Sure you do. That's the idea. Watching cars go around a track could be anybody, right? So when I had my wife she got into NASCAR, it wasn't because of the cars going around the track. It was because the way the cars looked. There were certain sponsors that she was more keen to, and then B, the personality of the driver when they got out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do think it's important when these guys are getting these big paychecks. No, remember Formula the Vegas thing?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How exciting was that?
Yes.
When they won, you know, and they're just like, it's like, man, dude, you just won a boatload of cash. Like, I mean, holy crap.
These are moments that need to be caught for this to be real.
Yeah.
So when it's always been the virtual world of racing, at these purses, it's becoming real. But if you really want to make it real, it comes at that next step where they are real. And like you said, these guys need to take some coaching and marketing, or being marketable.
What all the drivers do.
You know,
I mean, we can still poke fun at Kimi.
Well, like
Kimi the Iceman, but you know, you're gonna have that guy. You're gonna have the guy that's
Sure.
very stoic, but
Well,
he's a
like
personality.
Challenger with his picture here and his long hair, and it's like, well, I want to know, does his persona match that long hair? You know, because maybe that's the guy I'm going to be rooting for. You know,
That's awesome.
But I like, you know, if you think of the growth years of NASCAR, I think it's fair to say that it was on the back of Jeff Gordon. And to an extent, at least their super explosion happened, in my opinion, when Jeff Gordon came into stardom. Coincidentally, Days of Thunder resembled Jeff Gordon in this funny way. And the Yankee from California, cool kid from Hollywood, comes to NASCAR. And the women are now fans because they love Jeff Gordon. He's got the trophy wife and Brooke Gordon back in the day. And the whole package is what people were jumping on board for. And maybe some of them hated him, but that was just as important, because with that persona came the ability to have people who were there rooting for, and just as powerful, the people who are rooting against, you know. And
Right.
so in modern day, you know, everyone wants to trash
People
the
like
bushes.
an underdog, right? People like an underdog. People. So
Yes.
there's all these different things you can play with, and I'm just, it's a kind of long-winded discussion, but I think the important part is, if we're trying to push sim racing and the esports in that direction, and I'm not saying that every person is like that, because I think Spatial made the point, you know, GT sport drivers, there have been some guys that are very excited and animated. I mean, for those of you that don't know, but John Force used to get a lot of attention because John Force is such an animated guy when he gets out of the car. It doesn't matter if he
That's an
loses,
understatement.
crashes, is on fire, wins, doesn't matter. He's so animated. People were drawn to his personality. There's no reason why you can't have that in sim racing, you know? And I mean, look at the top streamers, right? These guys, some of these guys aren't going to be esports guys, but the reason they're popular is because of their personality. So just imagine if you have really, you know, high level esport guys that have a really good personality, their marketability is going to go up, right?
Sure.
Sponsors are going to jump on board, this whole thing. So I think the point is that as we push this direction, there's just little things that can be stepping stones and be improved upon to get to the next level.
Sure. I think of like a Enzo Benito or Ollie Pakala, and both of these guys have bigger than life personalities. And, you know, because of it, they're some of the most known sim racers. And in Enzo's case, he's really won some huge things. Ollie's a great sim racer, and the top of the best there are. But he's maybe not as good as some of those other guys. But because he's so personable, because he's got such a great personality, because when you do put a camera in his face, he's always got that John Force type bigger than life thing going on, and it makes it really easy to become a fan of those people too, because they're fun, you know. It's not a lot of fun when you put the camera. Yeah, when the guy
Ollie's
just is like,
great example. Ollie is super fun, very interesting to listen to. So if Ollie's racing, like, I gravitate towards Ollie because I understand that guy. Like,
yeah,
and that's all I'm trying to get at. And, you know, esports is going the way of big dollars. We're not going to avoid it. It's already here. They're going to start getting bigger sponsorships, just like all the other esport competitions, unless the bottom falls out of it, which I hope it doesn't, but it's possible.
right.
We're just there. We're already there.
Now, do you think it's fair? We're getting long. We're not even have a topic today at the end of the show. Do you think it's fair that the teams were like kind of all over? You had Wood Brothers, JR Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, Roush, Richmond eSport. No, let's not include that one. So you had those five, I think that was five, like hardcore real life NASCAR teams. Then you've got your Williams eSport, which is not NASCAR. This is a NASCAR tournament. Williams is about as far from NASCAR as you can get. Burton, Kligerman eSports, Richmond eSports. So these are like NASCAR affiliation level eSport teams. So they have their affiliations to NASCAR, but they're certainly not the same as Wood Brothers, JR, or Roush. And then you've got your just totally eSport teams like Logitech and the Renegades, and I can't remember the name of the other two. But is that, I mean, when you're going into an open draft, I guess that's part of going into an open draft. I was just going to say, as a college guy, you come out of the draft and, you know, you want to go to the Yankees, but, you know, it could just as easily be the, I don't want to step on somebody's terrible team. It could be one of the backmarker teams at the same time.
Quick save.
Yeah, I don't need those kind of enemies. How dare you say that about my Angels? Sorry.
Oh, cat's out of the bag.
There you go. It was easy when it's crosstown rivalry, so I can get away with that one, I think. But yeah, but is it fair to have a draft where there's so much? I mean, because I would think, I mean, this is just me. I would think that if I was in that draft and JR picked me, Conti and Davies, I'd be like, oh, thank God. And then at the same time, let's face it, if I got picked by Renegades, as great at eSport now, and I could be wrong because that could be the best pick of all. This real life eSport team who actually knows how to market eSport characters, knows how to get you into the limelight, knows how to get you paid. I don't know, but it's kind of weird that you would have that kind of diversity in the teams picking drivers in the draft.
I think that it doesn't. I think for us that are racing fans, it matters, but I think in the overall scheme, it doesn't. If that makes sense. I think it's inevitable. I think you're going to see these other esports teams have realized there's an opportunity in sim racing to jump in, and they're going to take those opportunities. So I think that it's almost irrelevant. Doesn't matter what I want, right? When we talked about F1 2018 being really big or GT Sport being really big, doesn't matter what I want. It's whatever the dollar number brings in. Mm-hmm. And obviously that dollar number has brought in outside influences from other esport teams. As much as if I was in the draft, I'd want to go to a Wood Brothers or a JR Motorsports or something like that. You get drafted to another team that's just an esports team, well, then that's where you're going to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Carl says the most important thing to learn as a esports personality is to stand at an angle and learn to take a picture with your arms crossed. Yep. Look all serious, menacing.
I'm very tough with my pretend car steering wheel. Yeah.
I'm looking for who actually busted a smile. Very few. Clampett has the only guy who like actually threw in a quality smile.
I want to see some guy just give some goofy photo like, kind of.
And then what about, you know, in F1 2018, this is sort of a similar situation where you have guys who are on established sim racing teams being drafted to real life teams. You know, maybe there's conflict, maybe there isn't, but on track. So now are Ray Alfala and I believe it's Nick Overland, right? I think it's Nick Overland. Are they supposed to work as teammates now when they've never been teammates before? And every teammate,
yeah, I don't know,
thing that we've ever put together in sim racing has been because I like you, I want to be your teammate, not because we were drafted together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if, and who knows if that will be honored all the way across and through the grid, or if that ends up being a case-by-case basis too, you know. Team order, I just can't even imagine when, like, if a team tried to throw down team orders to sim racers, and the sim racers would be like, yeah, right.
Yep.
I don't think you know how we do it in sim racing. I'd take my mother out.
I would wreck my grandma to win. Actually, I do that in the real world too, so that's nothing different.
My mom would expect no less of me.
That's right. All right.
All right. Should we move on?
I think so. I think
we should just jump to the discussion part here.
All right. Well, so I'll mention this one real quick and then we'll discuss. Just another super team of forces, I guess. Verstappen and Norris, you know, so Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, if you don't know their names, join forces. It's not just them, but those are the key names in the Bathurst 12-hour BMW. Obviously, these guys are all part of that, Team Redline's total domination of anything to do with a pro-life / sim racing driver. So basically no surprise that all these guys are at Redline. But the star-studded Team Redline lineup has Verstappen, Norris, along team boss Atzi Kirchhoff. Now, and BMW factory driver Katzberg. So that is one of the 4-man lineup of Team Redline. So that's kind of that's almost an all-star field without going into sim racing, which is pretty cool, pretty awesome.
Well, and they're fielding 2 cars there also, so that's one team.
Yeah. And then the other team, it looks like we've got Van Gisbergen, Ben Cornett, Justin Ruggier, and Rudy Van Buren of the McLaren simulator driver. So anyway, that's pretty cool. Those are some. That's 2 dream teams right there. That's for sure. Bathurst,
it'll be exciting if they can keep it off the fence at Bathurst.
Yeah, we're not doing Bathurst. We chose to not run that race.
The bad hurt.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of budget here at the Sim Pit. We just don't have that many chassis.
Got to pay for all them dents in the carbon fiber fenders.
That's right.
So, all right. And that does it for today's news. I'm not sure if you can even call that a news show.
I was going to say that was sort of news.
It's a discussion show, and a little light on news, but hopefully we didn't overdo it on some of the topics.
I think that's what we were afraid of, that we were so light on news, we felt we had to
extend everything out.
Yeah, fill in a little bit. But
anyway,
hour and a half.
Well, I have a question for you two, and I've been kind of battling this, I think, a little bit myself as of late. With all the prep for Daytona, and then starting in hard on the prep for Sebring. Sim racing burnout. We've heard people talk about it, and I know you guys as YouTubers have seen it before too, with people just going so far into working on something. But sim racing burnout, is it a real thing? And what's your guys' opinion on that?
It's funny. You're the second person in a week who's brought up this topic, by the way. Michael Thompson, not to point fingers at anybody. Michael has brought up a similar topic in our Discord chat this week, and I think burnout is very real on anything that we do regularly. And sometimes it's things we love. You can get burnout on work because you don't like your job, but even if you love your job, you can still find yourself burnt out from time to time in doing it. You could be into RC airplanes and do it all the time and love that thing, but then, all of a sudden one day you're like, I've been doing this a lot, I'm a little burnt, and I think that stems from it getting too repetitive in some way, shape, or form. So for me, burnout is something that does happen from time to time. As a broadcaster, I think I have it easier because I'm lucky to be able to get in the car nowadays as much as I am coming home from work each night to be able to sim race, kind of, that life. But there are a few things. I think that sports psychology, so if we were talking about football players, baseball players, cyclists, whatever, they all get burnt out as well. And it's the same thing. It turns into a grind at times. And anyway, I think there are a lot of things that people can do. Everybody reacts to different types of changes in their life to create stimulus of sorts, the opposite of burnout. But I think that, to put it bluntly, sometimes you might even have to just walk away. You might just have to take a break. You might just have to go smell the roses, do something else, pay attention to, I'm not a family guy, but if you have a family, maybe it's time to just step back and be more involved in your family and then I'll finish this up, and then I have a million other ideas, but I'll just say it this way. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. So, your girlfriend leaves town and you've never loved her so much. You've never missed her so much just because she's gone. Sim racing is that girlfriend. And when she's gone, just give it a little time. It won't take long till you're just sitting there with a broken heart, dying to be back with her again. And I think that's the easiest cure-all, but it also is...
Don't let her know that.
But it's also the suckiest because it means that you're taking a break. Oh, I'm a sick man. Sim racing is my girlfriend.
That's perfect. Sim racing is my mistress. Yeah, do you want me to go now?
Yeah, well, I have a million more, but I just felt like I was kind of monologuing. Okay.
Well, I didn't
know
if you wanted to keep going.
No, I need a break.
I don't get it, and I think the main reason is because I have very diverse interests. You know, I play music, I play in a band. I got just a bunch of other stuff that I like to do, not just sim racing. So for me, it's not that hard. I do regular gaming as well. Like I said earlier, I'm playing the new Resident Evil 2 remake, and I've, you know, during the day I've been doing stuff, and then I'm like, you know what? I don't really feel like driving tonight. I'm gonna sit out on the couch and hang out with my wife for a little bit, and then when she falls asleep or goes to bed, I'll play some video games because it scares the crap out of her, so she can't really watch it. But so I do regular gaming, so I don't typically burn out. I may go through phases where there might be something that I do a little more of than other things, but typically I'm more of a goal-oriented guy. When I get to that goal, then I'm kind of done. So for instance, the Daytona 24, once we were done with that, like, I'm good. I don't need to start in on the next endurance thing. I can't practice that much. That will burn. If you want to talk about burnout, that will burn me out. Starting right away with a race that's almost 2 months away at that point, I can't do it.
Sure.
I can't turn endless laps and not race something. So I too much prep will burn me out. But other than that, I don't really have that issue. If I ever feel like I'm starting to get fatigued, which is not normal, but I mean, if you're, let's say for instance, I'm doing a review and I've played it enough that I'm like, I've had my fill, then I go on to another sim. I don't force myself to keep doing that. So I think if maybe you've only got 1 or 2 sims to play, that's probably a larger reality for you that you can get burnout. Or if you don't have a lot of other activities that you like to do, again, that probably will lead to burnout. I'm fortunate enough that I don't really have that issue. I would say if you're getting burnout, do something else. You know, find another combination of car, play a different game, something like that.
You nailed it on the head in what you were saying there. Or at least one of the things that comes to mind for me on how to prevent or cure burnout, not wanting to take a break, because although that would work, I don't want to take a break. This is what I love doing. How do I keep it so that I'm stimulated? But you said it, it's goals. I think we often, you know, the something very easy to do with something that is competitive sim racing, but we do it all the time, is to become complacent. And just kind of feel like, oh, well, I'm where I am on the grid. I know I'm always behind that guy. I'm always ahead of this guy. So unless something changes, everything's normal. We'll do that for too long, and it sort of serves no point other than killing time. This is a competition. I mean, there are people who just sim drive, but I'm talking what we do. Sim racing is a competition. I think setting goals, and goals can't just be vague like I want to be faster. You know, you have to, like, define goals so that you can achieve those goals. And I think that as long as you have goals, you know, in gaming and consoles, they call them achievements. You know, we create our own achievement list. And it's like, you know what? I know that I'm doing this. And whether it's beating certain individuals, maybe it's your rating in whatever sim it is. Maybe it's by lap time because you know what you've always done historically. But I think that will go a long way in creating that. I think that walking away, a different version of walking away, is having other hobbies. Like Billy said, I think having a full life makes it hard to get burnt out on the things that you're doing, because everything starts becoming somewhat sacred because it's all jockeying for very limited time. You know, so if you have a lot of things going on, when you do get to your sim, it becomes sacred time instead of just, I'm going to drive again. Another one, I think
if you're not a... Oh, go ahead.
No, because I was going to do another. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think if you're a pro, then it's going to consume more of your time than maybe the normal person. But if you're not pro, consider not being so hardcore about it. If this isn't going to be something you're going to make a living at, I know that, you know, even just doing the championships, those 12-week championships that iRacing can burn you out.
Sure.
So don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't force yourself. God, I got to run this track I don't like. I will, if I don't like a car or a car track combination, I don't run. Don't feel obligated. Don't force yourself to do it. Just go, you know what? It's just not that fun to me. I'm just going to sit this one out. You guys have fun. That is okay. You do not have to run all the time.
I think changing disciplines. So many of us identify us as a certain type, ourselves as a certain type of sim racer. I'm an oval guy. I'm a road guy. I'm an open wheel guy. I'm a GT guy. I'm a dirt guy. Whatever. Change. We did a patron race last month, and I made it dirt rally cross. And I mentioned that, and Billy liked it. Everybody else hated the idea at first. And since then, everybody's been really into rally car. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. That's not it. But we all changed disciplines and were inspired by it. Wreckfest, you can call it a game. You can call it a sim. We have so much fun playing Wreckfest, not because it's sim racing, but because it's the gamier side. It might as well be playing first-person shooter or something completely different in some ways, even though it's a total driving game. I'm not trying to put Wreckfest down at all in that category, but we have so much fun playing Wreckfest because it's just a fun diversion from the norm, and I think the more that you can throw that in helps as well. And the last thing, and this is the one that I think goes a long way, and maybe not enough people do it, maybe it's time to go to a real-life race. Maybe it's time to get out there, because most of us sim race because we don't have the money to really race. I mean, I think it's fair to say that a lot of us are here because we can't afford the real deal. And maybe it's time to go see and feel, and not just on TV, because TV doesn't do it justice.
Oh,
but
God, no.
You got to hear and feel and smell the fuel, the tires, the dirt, the asphalt melting, whatever, and I think that it's hard to go to a real life race and by like halfway point not already be itching for the door, because damn well the second you get home you're hopping in your rig. So yeah, I think there are a lot of things we can do to motivate and inspire and prevent burnout.
I even get it watching it on TV too. I'll watch it on TV and be like, hell yeah, I want to drive that car, like the Bathurst. I think that's what's kind of been fighting, I'm not going to say burnout, but trying to figure out what I want to do on my channel is I kind of made the decision that races that are coming up, like I want to get excited for those. So I'm going to do a tribute week or a salute to week of, so I did Bathurst, I did Daytona. I had so much fun doing those races and coming up with the combinations and trying to figure out what cars I wanted to run. I actually got better at running the tracks because I had so much fun running the cars and preparing for the video. I got better at Bathurst and everything else. So it's real racing just in general will do it for me. I have a hard time going to, I used to go to the dirt track all the time. Then I started racing it. I have a hard time going because I potentially still could race, and it's depressing.
I know that. I know that problem too. That's vicious.
Going to I remember the first time I went to the Pirelli World Challenge when they had it at Sonoma. That was awesome. I got to walk through the pits. I got to sit in a race prepped R8 and ask a bunch of questions. And I went in and talked to the guys over at the Bentley camp. And the guys that were running the McLarens, the GM, I forget their name. People know the cars. My wife does. She's like, she doesn't care. She just walks around. Hey guys, how's it going? So what's this and what's this? And it's hilarious because they'll start explaining it to her. And me, I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. But then I get in there and I start looking around. And when we went to the Bentley one, it was so cool to see how low those Bentleys are. Oh, the roof line on those things, they're so wide. They're such a big car, but the roof line is so squashed. I was like, and then they opened the hood for me, showed me the engine bay. I'm like, holy crap, how did you guys cram that thing in there? And it's so awe-inspiring when you get to go to a real race and you get to hear the cars. And that's when they had the Cadillac and everything. Oh, man, the Cadillac was just awesome. It was so loud, but that definitely gives you, or at least gives me inspiration to go I want to go home and try these cars because this is so cool.
Yep. I was kind of bummed that the real life Daytona race was after ours, because I'm watching the race, dying to go do some driving at Daytona, and I'm like, I don't need to do any more driving at Daytona, but I'm like still itching to, because it was inspiring me to get out there, and yeah. Trying to think of other things. I mean, again, if you're getting burnout, I think you're just kind of doing it wrong. No, no, it just me. I just think
having fun though. You are doing it wrong, in my opinion. You are doing
exactly, and that's what I meant. It's like, well, it's definitely time to change it up, or change your motivation or the reason why you're doing it. You know, or find it. But yeah, and then I think I'm always talking about like working out, even though I don't always do it, but I always want to be working out. And I also think that that's part of it is the mental aspects of working out, what I believe fitness does for your brain when it comes to competition. But the other part is it's adding that diversity, having another hobby, having it so that now, I'm going from work to the gym to my rig. And, if you're running around like that, it's really hard to get burnt out.
Yeah, well, working out has all kinds of benefits, not mentally, not just physically, but mentally. It can make you sharper, make you focus better than you previously were. Working out has all kinds of benefits. It's a stress reliever, so working out is a great way to actually stay mentally sharp and fight depression and repetition and that kind of thing. So it's a good point.
Yeah.
I love doing like you. I love getting on my road bike and going for a ride.
Yeah.
It just mentally clears everything. I'm doing something that I enjoy still. I mean, I used to run track and cross country a lot, and I hurt my knee. So running along with my seasonal asthma really kicks my ass. So running is really not an option for me anymore, but I can get on the bike and go ride 20, 30 miles, and I feel great.
It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's like you sort out your thoughts. And I also find that when I'm on a bike, or a long run would work, but I can't do long runs either anymore. But those long workouts like that, and it's not the same as lifting weights. It's that cardio long, that not only do you start sorting everything out in your brain, but I find that because you're already tired, like on an exhaustion level, that you don't fight yourself. Like if you sit on your couch and dwell on the things that upset you, you'll resist yourself, you'll bite yourself, you'll cloud the issues, but when I'm out working out, and I'm not trying to promote riding a bike for everybody, but when I'm out riding my bike, that resistance doesn't happen when the same thought processes are happening. You're right. And, it sorts itself out. Anyway, so go work out, everybody. Everyone go be strong, be fit, be good.
I just like the clarity that it brings. It does, I'm fortunate that I am close to a really nice bike trail by the American River. So I can drive just a little bit, get on my bike, and it's a 25-mile stretch one way if I wanted to. And I've done it where I've started at one end, gone to the other end. My wife or my buddy comes and picks me up, or I've done the full 50, gone down and back, and I might, you're going to spend the day basically doing it, a good 5 hours or whatever it is, 4 or 5 hours. But sometimes you need that. Sometimes you just need that break and whatever. Get out of the house, get some sun, get some fresh air. And I've done that where I've been resistant to things. I can't tell you the amount of things that I've talked myself out of. When I was playing in a band, I'll never forget. I get inside my own head, and it's really stupid, but I've done it in racing. I've done it in pretty much everything hobby-wise that I've done. I get inside my own head. I talk myself out of it, psych myself out, instead of being running taught me to be mentally tough. And I felt like that's where my strong suit was. I may not be the fastest guy in there, but I can mentally play games with you and break you down, and I'll win. And doing other things, like when I was playing in a band, I had an opportunity to go sing for a band called Primer 55. and I was loyal to my band. I got in my head, I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this because they're going to get signed to a record deal. They're going to go play Ozfest and do all this stuff. I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not. And I let that one slip away. Like, that slipped right out of my fingers because I got in my own head and said, I'm not good enough to do this. And what I find is doing exercise. When I was racing the sprint car, I always felt better, and I was always more mentally clear when I was racing when I exercised. I did some form of exercise. So I think Shaun, you bring a really important aspect up that I think a lot of us don't really think about.
Yeah, it helps. It definitely helps. And I think it's one of those things that has multiple benefits. And again, I'm currently not working out. So I say that as someone who personally needs to do the same thing. It's like, well, it'll go a long way for me because it'll, fix those aggressions and those frustrations, and it'll create more energy because now you get, endorphins and other things going. It'll go a long way. And again, whether it's working out or again, it doesn't matter if I think it just comes down to enriching one's life in general. And then the last thing I think I'd say, I mentioned, sometimes maybe it's time to go find a new league, because through leagues is where we find our friends. So now maybe it's a different group that you're hanging out with on a chat or whatever, a different crowd or a different circle you're running in. And I'm not saying everyone should go changing everything all the time, but, again, maybe you've run too many seasons in the exact same scenario, and,
Put yourself in a different car for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's part of why I don't get burnout as well. I drive everything.
Yep.
I mean, I'm all over the place, whether it's between sims, whether it's rally, whether it's a street course or a road course, 10 top, formula car, dirt car. Like, I enjoy driving everything.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Brandon?
Well, I appreciate the input. That was, hopefully it gave other people some answers or some ideas as far as that goes. It's definitely helped as far as me kind of doing a few things that I've been doing this week as far as the karting sim or the dirt rally or even the flying stuff. It definitely, took that away from the forefront of my mind, and thinking, oh, geez, I got to get on and turn some more laps, and I don't know where I'm going to find more speed or consistency, that sort of thing. So, at least I listened up to where you said workout, and then I kind of tuned out a little bit. But
fair enough.
I think
yes.
I think that if we want to talk from personal experience on this topic, I think that we right now are in the middle of sort of something that we've done to ourselves. So we came off at Daytona, and our whole endurance team, most of everybody was really pumped for the next race, which was a little too far away to start actually getting on track. But, we're all having fun with the races and eager to do it. So we want to, because that's where our brain is taking us. But like Billy said, it's like, well, how much practice can you do for one event before you're just going to start, causing yourself pain and frustration? So I think we actually started for Sebring, a few weeks early. We weren't supposed to. We called it unofficial, thinking that maybe if it was unofficial, it wouldn't cost us the time, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah. But, here I am. We're still 3-4 weeks out, and it's like, you know what? I'm not going to get any faster than I am. I mean, maybe a fractional amount. But if I keep driving,
push like 2 to 3 weeks out of the race, and like just I can practice in my own time.
Yeah.
We can have organized practice once a week. For me, that's a little easier to accomplish than having such a long oriented goal like that.
Yes.
Is really a tough thing to achieve if it's not your only thing that you're doing. And I just can't. Yeah. It's just not me. I can't do it.
Well, it's a learning process too, as far as trying to schedule that sort of thing. But I think with us, as far as our team went, we felt so robbed at Daytona, and after all that work, I think that energy just kind of rolled over into it, and so it was just how it happened. So
absolutely.
But I appreciate the input on that. That was great. I appreciate that. I guess my favorite thing is asking you guys, what do you have coming up? I feel like quoting Brad Pitt in the movie Seven on this one. Shaun, in this delivery, you're expecting, what's in the box? It's like...
Oh, what's in the box?
What do you guys have coming up?
I actually this week I made no forward progress on things, unfortunately, because again it's been computer software. For me, I think the biggest thing that coming up is some practice streams to see if all of the work we've been doing behind the scenes is going to pay off. And some fine tuning of our stream quality and preparation. So that's something else that helps me on the burnout is, well, I'm not just doing the laps, but I'm also trying to work on the stream.
You're testing other, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like only a fraction of my time is actually on track in some cases. Beyond that, I am working on a next level GT track rig review, which is a really cool rig. Not to let the cat out of the bag, but it's on caster wheels. And I'm like, oh, now I don't know if everybody needs to move their rig around like I do, but it was like, oh, this is the greatest rig ever. It's on wheels and I can just move it wherever I need it to be.
My GT Omega's on casters.
Yeah.
I put my R seat on casters too.
I really like that. Yeah, you know what? Now I got to go buy. I'm looking at my R seat and it's like, you know what? I could go to Home Depot and buy some casters and probably lift that sucker up. But yeah, so that's been cool. That review, I'm on the works. That shifter review that I was talking about, that company SSH, they actually made a bunch of changes to the design. So it's that 3D printed one. So the main features are still the same. So I'm still going to review it because the guy did send me the shifter, but it's sort of like kind of tough because it's like, well, this isn't even what somebody would order, but I think that I can cover both sides of that. So I'm working on that as well. Beyond that, my head's kind of in that Lemons race. It's actually a Lucky Dog race. So tomorrow I'm going up to Buttonwillow and going to get to turn some laps.
I'm so jealous.
Rub it in.
It's so much fun to run. I love running that track. It's so cool. The scenery isn't cool. It's out in the middle of BFE.
Yeah.
But
brown.
Yeah, it's just brown.
Yeah. Those
But
that
the
aren't
track
familiar with the
itself-
Bakersfield area,
Yeah.
The track itself is just, I really enjoyed running that track. Are you guys going the clockwise?
I believe
Direction?
so. I believe
That's usually
so.
the way the
Yeah,
sports
that's
car
the
goes.
I think it is because I think if they're doing backwards, they usually put it in like the title and find some pun for going reverse direction because it is, Lucky Dog.
Yeah, they had, I guess before I started running the karts, we went counterclockwise. So you go down that front straightaway and you make the right around the pits.
Right.
And then the first time I ran, we were with, I think, Corvette Club and something else. When we raced, we went the same direction that they did. And I guess before they weren't doing that bus stop in the back straightaway.
Uh-huh.
But when I went, we did. So I got to run it the same direction as pretty much everybody else does.
Right.
And I loved it. I thought it was super cool. There's a lot of neat elements to that track. So I'm a little jealous of you.
My buddy did it the backward direction on a motorcycle day there. They'd gone reverse direction. I've only run it the normal direction. I've never run it in reverse.
Okay.
I've seen it run in reverse, but I've never been on track there that direction. So yeah, I'm pretty psyched on that.
Cool.
And then 2 weeks from then is the race, which means I have to figure out how to get my qualifying times in for our endurance race because I won't be here that weekend, but I'll come up with something. So this has kind of thrown a wrench into a bunch of plans I had coming up through the end of the month, but all for the good reason, so I'll accept it.
We'll give you some latitude on that one.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
How about you, Billy?
Well, I was going to try and get a race in this week with in iRacing, because the World of Outlaws this weekend for the sprint cars, they're at Volusia, and in iRacing they're at Volusia. So I wanted to get a race in with that. I had electrical work being done this week, so that shot 2 days. Plus my R Factor 2 review that Challengers Pack review took way longer than I was hoping it would. Plus botching 3 other videos, so I've kind of lost all the time that I had to prepare for a race. So if I have time, I'll run that. Beyond that, I'm gonna play some more Resident Evil 2. Finish up Leon's first playthrough, because you can play through the game 4 times. There's different stuff that happens, and then I'll probably do some Daytona again, some sort of like salute to Daytona stuff for the 500 next week. And if I have a chance, I'll try and run one of the 500 races in iRacing. If at the very least, I'll try and run one of those 40-lap standard Class A races or whatever they are, the NIS, but not NIS, but whatever it is, the special events I'd like to try and run next week. So
that's right. That's next week.
Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff I can
I
do.
have a paint job for it and everything. I'm gonna have to get ready for that.
Oh,
no
snap.
obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically locked in now.
Now I am. Yep. No getting around. What about you, Brandon? What do you got going on? Or are you skipping it all because you're so burnt? No, I'm kidding.
No. I'll get readjusted and kind of figure out where I need to be as far as my commitments to things. I've got a handbrake showing up today for rally. I just couldn't do the button, so hopefully that gets here today and give that a crack and see how I get on with it. So
awesome.
Other than that, that's about it.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Very cool. Well, I think that just about does it for this week. I think we covered all of our bases. I guess I'll finish with my usual, which is encouraging all of you out there to get out there, do some racing. Be sure to let us know what kind of cool racing is out there. If there are good leaderboards or time trials or leagues or things that we need to know about, be sure to send them in over here at the Simpit so we can talk about them on the show. Or always have recommendations when people ask us for places to race and places to have fun. So that is all on my mind. Anything else from you, Billy?
No.
Brandon?
Not really.
Just thank you to everybody for watching, and appreciate the thumbs up and the shares, and growing
Yes,
the
thank you
show.
very much.
Love having you guys here and asking questions.
Yeah, just another
Thanks,
cool
everybody, for hanging
show.
out.
One of my favorite things to do, just sit around and talk sim racing. Just BS about our favorite sport, hobby, common interest, that being sim racing.
Sean's going to be starting a new business as a life coach as well, so you can get on the start of that. You're launching a new website.
Oh, those who can't teach.
Somebody asked you to hold up your mug, Sean, your new mug.
Oh, look at that
Beautiful.
fancy thing.
Yep, until Golf comes and steals it from me, and I'm like, no, you shall not have that mug. So, yeah, very cool. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Been a lot of fun, as usual. Like Brandon said, be sure to like this show. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and be sure to tell a friend about what we're doing so they can be here for the conversation next Friday as well. We'll be back next Friday with another edition of the Sim Tunnel with Brandon Waters, Billy Strange, and myself. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole, and I'll see you on the track.
See you guys.
Take care.